Welcome to the Overcomers Overcoming podcast series, where we profile those who are either overcoming or have overcome a life topic. The purpose of this series is to help impress on others that there are multiple solutions to anything that a person is going through. We also want to let people know that they are not the only ones that are going through whatever challenge it is that they are having to endure at the moment. And if the situation you're going through is as a result of a decision you made, we want to help people with critical thinking to determine a better solution to make an informed decision so that they don't have to go through and encounter life challenges. I'm Ron Cooper, founder of the Cooper Culture. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty. The Cooper Culture is sponsoring this podcast series. Today, we feature again Corey Green for the fourth episode, where he explains the book that he has written, Karate Wise, that is available at Barnes & Noble and Amazon. But he explains in this, in the book, but then he also explains in this podcast how he works with people with special needs. Marty, what were some of the thoughts you had that our listeners can take away?
My thought was, as he was speaking, I really appreciate how he spoke to his passion for helping children with special needs. It doesn't matter what special needs they have, he is passionate about helping them. And the program that he has set up that helps them. And it also is a help to the parents. He can talk to the parents about the special needs and how to handle it.
Corey Green will tell you during the podcast, and we'll emphasize as well, that he is not a board-certified medical clinician, but rather he has life experience. He has overcome many things in his past, and he has an innate sense of how to identify people with special needs, but he also has a holistic approach to help people overcome and cope with the autistic and sometimes ADHD. And he goes through a variation of challenges that special needs people have. So listen along with us to determine what his process is and how we can help those who have special needs without labeling or stigmatizing those with whom you're speaking. So Marty, I was just captivated by his sense of how he can work with these kind of people. So let's listen together and see if we can't learn just what it is that we can take from this. Hey folks, it's glad to have you back with us. Corey Green on the fourth episode. Corey, you have very aptly expressed a lot of things that you have overcome in life, a divorce at early age, and just not knowing exactly where you fit in and so forth. And you've overcome all of that past, and you are developing what it seems to be a very productive, use the term forward-leaning business, and karate seems to be your passion and purpose. And you have, as I understand it, Corey, written a book in Karate Kid, and if I understand correctly, that's been 10 years in the making. Have I summarized correctly?
Yeah, pretty much, yes. I wanted to say that the book, by the way, thank you again for having me on. It's just been always a pleasure to work with you, Ron, and tell everyone the good news. I wanted to say about the book, though, that when I first started getting the idea for it was back in 2008, and it took 10 years to finally publish it. Yes, you're correct. And keep going, though, Ron.
Okay, well, Corey, that's great. You have a passion, if I'm assimilating your life correctly, for kids. It seems like that is a primary focus, maybe not exclusive, but within that, you have a very niche talent to identify and help a person cope with autism. Is that correct? Correct assimilation, Corey?
I think, yes, that's correct. Yes.
And Corey, for Marty and me and other listeners, am I also correct that autism is never cured? You just learn to live with it. Is that also accurate?
Yes, you have to have some kind of coping mechanism or mechanisms to, get through this life. So everyone has to have something, and even people with autism have to have those things as well. Great.
And Corey, for those with autism, and if I understand correctly, there are varying degrees or spectrum of autism. How would a person learn to cope with autism? And now I'm addressing what the end result is that you can achieve through karate, but how would a person be able to cope with autism, whereas if they had not gone through your training, they would not be able to do, and then fill in the blank as well?
I think what it comes down to is being able to have an outlet for your expression of yourself. Whenever you are told, often when you're growing up, keep your hands to yourself, the opposite usually is what you want to do. Going against nature, because nature, kids want to, kick and punch and stuff like that, and they also often see that, so they will, act that out, even people with autism. But the thing with people with autism, this ends up being more of a therapy for them, because when you have someone that they approach them in such a way that you can sense the empathy with them, there's a difference between empathy and sympathy. Let's go over that real quick. Sympathy is how you feel about someone. You feel sorry for someone because of what they're going through. But what we really need to feel is empathy. Because when you have empathy for the other person, then you can understand their position, the follower's position. And when you do that, the person with autism can sense it. They can sense sincerity more than most people can. And I think what happens is when you go into that environment and you're sincere and you help them and you build them up and you care about them, then they will grow as well. You just have to work with them. And I want to tell you a real quick story that happened not just long ago, where the parent at the end of the class, after 8 weeks of one-on-one with this guy, teenager, his mom said, "Can I just give you a hug?" And I said, of course, And so she gave me this hug because she says, "I can see it. He's changing. He's coming out of his shell. He's becoming more open to conversation, social interactions." And it's not just kids with special needs. I have parents same week said, "My daughter, he's Spanish. My daughter, she was really shy, but now she's outgoing, and she does, and those are the things that brings out in the person, the natural self, just magnified." Does that make any sense?
It does, Corey, and I'm just very curious from maybe a couple of different perspectives. One of the identifying characteristics, if I'm understanding autism correctly, is autistic people have maybe a little bit of a challenge socializing and interacting with people. Is that correct?
Absolutely. That's something we have to, I think we need to give them slack on. Because they don't learn the same way neurotypicals do. So therefore, their speech patterns aren't exactly right. But if you go ahead and look into different actors and actresses, you're going to find a lot of people that have autism that are really well known. People have said that Dan Aykroyd had autism. Sure. You wouldn't have known that. Or the man that played Silence of the Lambs, Anthony Hopkins. Same thing. So it's people you don't suspect. And so those people were able to cope, but I think they were able to hone their circumstance to where they were crafting their own life, and that's how some of these people became so successful. So here's the thing. People with autism are going to help create the future. And I don't know if you understand that, but they really will, because they are that analytical. They understand things a lot different than we do, to a deeper level than we do. So we have to try to understand what they're saying. And, sometimes you meet some people that, don't really have their thoughts organized. But you do meet people that very much do. So I think we need to listen to them because they probably have a lot of important things they need for us to hear, and we need to listen and just, absorb what they have to say.
Yes. Corey, let me take a little bit deeper look into this. You clearly understand people who are autistic, and you can, my guess is, within perhaps a couple of minutes, maybe not even that long, identify a person who is autistic. I think what I'm hearing you say is the autistic person knows they're different, but they don't know exactly how to express how they're different. Perhaps they process information, verbiage, differently than a person who is not autistic. Is it incumbent on us to understand the autistic person and know how to adapt and relate to that person? Is that what we need to do?
I think so. You have the different degrees of personality traits. There has to be something along the lines that also fall under people with personality traits with autism. Let me give an example of something that I found that's really interesting, a pattern of. I've taught a lot of people with the name Ryan or Alex or Jacob. And all those people that I taught, vast majority had autism. I don't know why, but that's true. So what my point is people with autism personality that you can identify. If someone's really shy and they don't want to look you in the eye, but they're smiling and looking away, someone might think, oh, that person's creepy. But then if you know what's really going on, you're like, oh, wait, they might have autism. So let me see if I can figure it out, but not be rude about it. Don't stare. But you have to listen to how they have a conversation. There's certain people that I meet that have speech issues. For example, little children, they won't say yes, sir. They'll say yes, sir. Okay, and I met a boy that was almost teenager saying yes, sir. And I thought that's interesting. I thought by the time he was that age, he would be saying sir, because speech therapy obviously was not really working, or he didn't get that help like he needed, and that's something he'll get teased for because of the way he talks. But again, instead of getting teased for it, maybe we should make people understand, hey, there's more going on than you realize, so maybe you should cut them some slack.
Right. Corey, this is just a wonderful talent that you have, that you're able to identify, but even more importantly, what's equally important, you're able to work with autistic people. And is it a combination of your social skills in addition to karate that complement each other, that help this autistic person adapt to life?
I think so. And, I challenged myself along the way. And I had an opportunity to do hosting at one time for several years, actually, on local PBS station. And I didn't like getting in front of a camera. And this is all live TV. So I think by me challenging myself, I had to take myself out of that comfort zone and put myself out there. And I didn't know why I was actually doing all that at the time. I thought, this is just a good experience. And I didn't tell you this. I used to be a radio DJ at one time, too. So I'm not really afraid anymore to get out there and say what I want to say and speak what the truth is. Because people need to hear that truth. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So, but I think what people also need to know about me is the vast amount of people I can teach. So I'm going to go through a list real quick. I can teach students with all levels of autism, including, of course, low functioning, nonverbal, people with Down syndrome, Costello syndrome, Kabuki syndrome, cerebral palsy, spina bifida, PDD NOS, which is pervasive developmental disorder, and then also not otherwise specified as what NOS means, ODD, which is oppositional defiance disorder, ADD and ADHD, which I would personally consider that to be a special need, blind, deaf, wheelchair bound, and even people with multiple diagnosis, children that have like ADHD and autism, or all those different letters put together. So it just depends on each child, but I have to know those things so I know who I'm dealing with. And when you teach enough of those people, you start seeing, those characteristics start to come out. So it's, when people say, well, I only have one child, with autism, I only work with my own child. Well, the people that work with children see it a lot more often than the parents do. But I think if parents understood what we see, then that way they would be identified as identifiers. Here's something else that is not talked about that's very important that people need to know with infants. When they're 6 months old, there's this test that I learned about, and everyone needs to know about this test. So this is the perfect time to tell you is right now. So to find out if your child might have autism, not if they do, but if they might, when they're laying on their back and they're 6 months old, if you gently grab their arms and you pull them up like you normally would any baby, if their head falls back and they're not able to support their head, then that means the neck muscles haven't developed yet. And there was a study they found that there's a big indicator right there that your child might have autism. Because if you notice the people that have Asperger's, their head's a little bit bigger than their body for a while. Then they have to grow into their head, if that makes any sense. So I hope that gives some insight and some ideas for people to do in the future if they have a child or if they have one right now, just to do a little test.
No, that's just great, Corey. It seems from my perspective, Corey, that we are either identifying more people than we have in the past with autism, and I'm curious from your perspective, is a greater percentage of people born autistic, or do we have better test methods to where we're able to identify better? Can you give us some insight into what that is?
I don't, I try to figure out the solution. I always try to be open-minded about the problem and how it all started. And it's hard to pinpoint exactly where the truth lies on how it happens. I've heard a variety of different ideas on how people have autism. Mm-hmm. However, from my experience and the people that I have in my own facility, my own place gives a good idea of what we're experiencing in society. And so I honestly believe we're seeing a lot more of it. And it's because it's happening more often. So again, the rate used to be like 160 in 2006, and by 2015 it was down to 160. So we're definitely increasing this amount. But on another scale, which people are not really paying attention to, I think is the children that don't have special needs, that are ages 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How are their behaviors? How are they acting? How is their coordination? How's their balance? Can they do push-ups yet, at 6 and 7 or 5? And if you don't do it with your child, they're not going to be able to do it. You have to teach them how to do a push-up. And there's ways you can do it. You have to build up their muscles because they're not really getting that exercise at all. And exercise is part of development and helps them be able to focus better in school. So you have to do all these things in order to provide the best environment for your child so then they can have a healthy lifestyle and they can get as far as they can in life. So by not letting your kid or doing these things with your child, I don't think they're doing a disservice. You've got to help your child in these basic things.
Sure. Corey, let me try to walk through a progressive awareness. I'm going to use that term. What Marty and I and a lot of the listeners would like to know is what is you've already identified some ways to identify autism. How do we let the person know that they are autistic, or do we? Marty and I want to be very careful not to label anybody or put a stigma on them. Is it, from your experience, is it appropriate to just let a person know that you are autistic, or is that something you want a term you want to stay away from, but yet be able to treat what you're diagnosing?
Okay, so I have to make sure I cover all my, cross all my T's and dot all my I's here, because this is a very important question you ask. And the first thing I have to state is I'm not a doctor. I can't make that claim. I can never tell anyone what I think they have, because that means I'm diagnosing them. And even though I have a big hunch, I don't have the certificate to say other. So what has to happen is the conversation, if I know that a child might have something going on, I'll just say it like that. I think there might be something going on. You want to get it checked out. And then they go, well, what do you think? Well, let me just say this. When I make a loud sound or a clap, your child covers their ears. Or they like to fidget a lot with their hands. Or there's a lot of little things that you can look for with people with autism that's been studied. And so you look for those things. And sometimes in class I'll do that on purpose. I'll make a big yell, like, ah, and see what happens. And if I see some people cover their ears really quickly, that can be an identifier of who has autism in a way. Not always, but it can be. So I look for things to give me clues to figure out who has something going on if they're not telling me. So it's not just, I have a keen sense to figure it out really quickly, but most people won't be able to figure out those subtleties. Let me tell you something about Ryan Rogers. He's at the point now where people didn't know he has autism. They don't understand that he's on the U.S. karate team, on the para team. People are trying to figure that out now. And they're like, wow, so he has autism. He's on the U.S. para karate team. And I told Ryan, I go, Ryan, he's starting to finally figure out the elite level where we've been trying to get to, the regular neurotypical person. He's getting to that point. I go, Ryan, you might get to the point, not trying to sound overconfident here, but what if he gets to the point where people don't think he has a special need because he moves really well? And that would be wonderful, because that's what we're trying to do. And that's the ultimate goal.
Great. And I'm just going to emphasize for the sake of the listeners that you are not a medically qualified doctor. So you have an intuitive sense, and while you're not medically certified or qualified to diagnose, you do have an intuitive sense. And so, Corey, I'm curious that as you work with those with autism, and you've just identified two aspects, two identifying characteristics: loudness, noise, and a lesser ability to interrelate well with people. When you have had the opportunity to work with autistic people, how would you describe their social interaction abilities? Are they able to cope with noise better? What is the end result that, and almost the best you can expect from your treatments?
I think when you have a kids that are neurotypical and you put them in one group, you'll have a range of how they're going to behave. And then you do the same thing with autistic people. Now, there's this one kid in my old location that when the sunlight was coming in, he looked at all the shadows. Okay, he would follow the shadows on the floor. And it was interesting because I never thought about the shadows or the light coming in or the sound of the fire truck going by or the rain on the roof that makes it really loud, that makes it really hard for them to hear. So all those different circumstances is how much keen they are into the noise. Even little kids do that too, but it's a little more deeper than that. So what I have to do is I have to be able to gain their attention to such a degree to where there's no outside distractions. Another thing I want to tell you is mirrors. Mirrors are a distraction. They don't always help. And oftentimes when these kids work with you, they'll look at themselves in the mirror because they keep watching themselves. And they're probably listening to you, but they're watching the mirror. And as you teach people martial arts, they can't look at themselves in the mirror when they're fighting an opponent. And that's exactly what they'll do when they spar. They keep looking at themselves in the mirror. So one of the tips I'll tell people out there in the world is this: cover the mirrors up, and you'll get at least double the focus.
So is it characteristic of an autistic person, they're easily distracted? I've always thought of that as ADHD, or are there a lot of overlapping characteristics between autism and ADHD?
There is, actually, because the behavior is what ADHD has. You have to deal with the behavior, but also they have a lot of hyperactivity. But then you have people that have autism that are more sensitive. So I can use these methods, what I call level 2 of Karate Wise, which we haven't talked about level 1 yet. I haven't even talked about the book. But in level 1, it's the information where it's easy to learn. But level 2, I use these methods in order to get the children to cooperate. And these methods are secret methods to a point, Ron and Marty, that, let me just say this, I've had people text me, email me, come by, physically try to watch more than recess a couple times and try to infiltrate how I'm doing it. No joke. And I have to deal with that because you have to protect what you know is your purpose. But what I can do is I can use these methods and I can get instant results because I can tell defiance in 10 seconds or less in a kid because of what I'm using to get them to stay on task. But that's what my point is, when you take these children and they have different special needs and you use the same method and it works on all of them, it's simple. And that's what you want, something that will work on everybody. And if it doesn't work for whatever reason, it's not on you. It's on the kid because the kid is not wanting to follow directions. Then you can identify behavior. So if behavior is the issue, you fix the behavior. When the behavior is fixed, then they can start learning. But if behavior is the problem, it's really hard for them to focus. If a kid is not calm, they can't balance well. So there has to be the correlation of all these little things put together in order to have the desired result that you want to see.
Corey, I'm very curious about the person with autism, ADHD, or anything like that. Is there a point that these people can be honest enough with you once they sense that there's a good relationship to say something to the effect, there's something different and wrong about me, I need help, or is that not even a term that they would use?
Well, I'll just tell you like this. I'm like a 1980s sensei in a way. So if I have a kid that has ADHD and tells me that the reason why, let's say they're like 10 or 11 years old, or even 13, if they tell me the reason why I can't focus today is because I don't have my medication, well, then I'm going to tell that kid, don't ever tell me that again, because you need to be able to know how to be able to focus and concentrate without that, so we have to deal with it, because those things, people think medication is where it's at. Well, people are talking about the holistic way of doing things, the things that are not going to hurt them, that won't make them long-term, addicts on these medications. So my point is that self-regulation has to be taught, and they have to understand how to do that themselves.
Corey, here's what I think is an extremely important aspect of your treatment method. And I don't want to divulge any trade secrets, but I think what you just said is everything about karate is a holistic treatment. You know it to work. And would you go so far as to say that any special needs child could learn how to cope with their situation without medication?
Absolutely. I've seen it happen. I've seen people able to get off medications from different things that they were going through, and just because they were able to cope with things better. I've seen it with my own eyes over and over again. Sometimes it takes maturity. Sometimes when the child gets 13, 14, 15, then they're out of that phase, and then there's a different phase the parents have to face. And sometimes that's when I get the students to come into my school, and that's happening a lot more lately. However, let me tell you this. It's very important that you don't have just an all special needs dojo, because then you have no regular neurotypical examples to look and learn from. So I think the magical number is 70-30. 70%, neurotypical, 30% special needs. It's manageable. Right now, I'm about half and half. And people don't even know. When they come in, they have no idea who has special needs unless they're really paying attention. And that's the way I like it, because everyone feels inclusive, and this school is becoming more exclusive because of what we're doing.
Great. Corey, tell us a little bit more about your book. I'm guessing that you have incorporated a lot of your stories, perhaps pictures, and I want to be careful again not to give away any trade secrets. But
okay.
Your book, I'm going to guess, is a major success story.
Well, it is something that was a hurdle that I didn't know was going to be the mountain I had to go over, basically. The hardest part was laying it out, and understanding how to do laying out of a book. And I had to do it. I tried it over and over again, and I had a computer fail. All these different things happened. But I was still able to make it all come together. Anyways, after all that, what this comes down to is basically it's a technical guide to teaching self-defense. And students that read this book will learn stances, blocks, in the second book I'm going to make the stances and blocks and katas and stuff like that, the things that people also know they see on TV. I'm just doing the katas. But partner stretches, 7 secret special stretches, more self-defense techniques. But in the first book, basically it starts off with simple things like what are people saying about us? There's stories in the beginning, testimonials, if you want to call it that, how to tie the karate belt, teaching people how to bow correctly. Everything starts and ends with a bow in karate. And then it lays out the formal procedures in karate, such as seiza, which is the time to calm the mind and the body. It's the first thing you have to do before you train. It's good to do after you train to reflect on what you learned. So when we do seiza, we tell the students to calm their mind and calm their body, to not think about any distracting thoughts. They don't need to be thinking about friends or games or toys or anything like that. They need to be clearing the mind of anything and just trying to relax and enjoy the training. And then when they open their eyes, and then they're ready to train, basically. There's no religious beliefs taught in the classes. Then once you get further along, you get into learning about warming up and stretching, and there's special stretches, runner stretches. Then we dive into how to make a punch, how to make a fist, and then go over balance, things you need to do to have better balance, 6 things you have to do, how we handle discipline in the dojo, and then we go into kicking. Now, if you ever watched Karate Kid, the movie, I watched it many times, and if you ever watched Daniel-san in his hotel room, his apartment, he was kicking, and when he would kick, he was looking at this book that had like 4 black and white pictures. Well, my book has over 100 pictures in the kicking section alone. There's 1,200 pictures. There's 312 pages. It's 8.5 by 11. So what this book has is more than just that: combinations, counterattack, self-defense. The self-defense techniques are 13 self-defense techniques that everyone should know how to do, some basic things. You can't put everything in a book. But what I did with this book, on top of what I just told you, is I added red and blue framed pictures, and there's red and blue text in boxes. And the red portion is what you learn. You just read the book and you learn everything that's in the red. And then you go back once you figure it all out, and you read the blue. And the blue is the teaching portion, to learn how to teach. And then once you do all that, you can have your own classes, because it makes the average person an instructor of that information in the book. But every dojo will also have the same access, same information for the time being. So Karate-wise, in a nutshell, is a reference manual. Now, self-defense-wise, we have had people use some of those moves in the book in real life. We had a man that had to save his family's life, his wife, his father, and his son. And I have a video I've already made on it. I can send it to you, and it talks about him defending himself with his bare hands, even though the attackers had a machete and one had a bat. And he only had trained with me for 6 weeks. And 3 weeks in, we started doing self-defense, and he had, like I said, 3 weeks later had to use that in his own home at 2 o'clock in the morning. So, yes, what I do really works.
Hey, that's great. Corey, let our listeners know the title of the book and where they can get a copy.
Yes, sir. It's called Karate Wise, A Technical Guide to Teaching Self-Defense. It's at Barnes & Noble and also at AmazonBooks.com.
Great. Corey, for those who elect to work with you, karate, and you're helping them through, they are helping the coping skills, if I've termed that correctly, with their various special needs. Does a person with special needs have to continue, or should they continue these coping skills for the rest of their life, or is this something they can learn coping skills early on and they've got it, they've graduated, so to speak? Help us along with that process.
Absolutely. You can do karate because you don't jump around all the time. You're really on the ground a lot. You can do karate for 90 years. So it can be a lifelong exercise. There's people that do the stretches that we teach on the beaches in Okinawa. Hundreds of people that are over 100 years old. We're doing almost the same stuff. Okay, so this is something that's going to benefit someone for a lifetime. Once they learn enough information, if they are in black belt, that's great. Ryan Rogers is the first guy to do that. By the way, we never got into his historical accomplishments, which is over 10. And people need to know he is a referee and a judge, too. And he's done a lot of amazing things. And people need to know his significance in this world and how he changed martial arts for people with special needs, especially autism, and broke the ceiling in a lot of ways. And he's a role model for a lot of kids. So he's able to cope, and so is Brennan Earnshaw, who actually was married in my dojo. Is there on CNN News. And he graduated high school, and they said he couldn't read and write. And so CNN News already shows what happened in the past and what he's able to do. And his boy's about 3 years old, and about a year and a half after he was married in my dojo. So people feel that strongly about what we do, to where once you're part of our family, like it should be, you're always part of the family. And I think people need families like what we try to provide.
That's great, Corey. You have perfected the art, the intuitive ability with yourself of identifying people with special needs, but then helping them to cope with those special needs and to maybe the term is function as best that they can with that. Corey, as our listeners listen to episodes 1, 2, and 3, they can get a greater appreciation of just how you have overcome earlier life challenges. And you have, I think it was episode 3, where you talked about developing your life purpose. It seems pretty clear to us that you have you've developed this life purpose and passion to work with autistic children. I know you've been profiled on CNN and local venues, that you've got a very good thing going for you. And I'm sure those who have special needs children are benefiting from what you have done. You've got just a fabulous talent set that many people can benefit from.
Thank you so much, Ron. I want to tell you something else that's very important that we didn't get to that I'll briefly glaze over. So level 1 of Karate Wise is the textbook. Level 2 of Karate Wise is these methods I've been using that are primitive. The reason why I say that is because level 3, we're building something with the university for several years now that's going to be built for the medical field using technology, which will also benefit people with special needs with and without. But my point is that we're taking it much further than people realize. In fact, we have the capabilities right now to film students doing kata, send it to the university, and have it put into virtual reality so people can practice in virtual reality. We're thinking that far ahead. There's also 2 more levels above that, but those are only attainable if I'm successful in these other ventures. So the franchising out is the second level that I talked about in the other podcast. But I want to make sure that it's clear people know that we do have something much bigger in the works. We don't show everything at once, but eventually we'll show you, and you won't find what we do on YouTube or Shark Tank because it's too easily duplicatable. Now you know.
Yep. No, that's great, Corey. Clearly, you are a work in progress. You are advancing your business, which has a focus on advancing people. And you're lovely to say that you are a success story in and of yourself, but I know your focus is on people. I'll close out by encouraging our listeners to get a copy of Karate Wise, available on Amazon or through Barnes & Noble. And again, Corey, you're a success story. You've helped a lot of people to be able to, I think, feel more comfortable with themselves through your coping skills. So our sincere congratulations to you, and we know perhaps the best is yet to come, quite truly.
Thank you so much. I'm just glad to share the good news, like I said, and nothing was scripted. We did all this off the cuff, and I'm glad that we did it the way we did it, because I wanted to express everything I tell you from my heart and from my mind and from every bit of me, because people need to hear that. They need to hear that transparency, that realism, and it can't get more real than what I'm doing. And I want people to be successful at doing what I do and help people, because that's what we need to do to make this world a better place. Help others help themselves.
That's great. Corey, you are clearly speaking from the heart, and that's what we love to hear.
Corey, I have really enjoyed this wealth of information. I just pray that more people will hear about this, that this will grow, because there are so many people in this world that need this type of help, and students or children that are going through this, that need understanding from adults and help from adults.
That's right. And the more people we can help, the more people understand how people are, then it won't be such a stigma anymore. People will be, I see the identifiers. It's just education, I believe.
Corey, we totally agree with you. And the more we're able to interact with people like you, we will learn just what it is we're dealing with, and then in turn learn to cope with those to help them through whatever it is they're going through.
Yes, sir. That's what we're trying to do. Absolutely.
Great. Corey, thank you so much, and we look forward to following your progress.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be on your show.
Great. We hope you sensed Corey's passion to reach out to those with people with special needs. He has developed this innate sense over a period of many years, having overcome obstacles in his childhood, and he has a deep passion as I hope you sensed, to reach out to others, to pass forward his life experiences, to help those with special needs to be able to cope with and be able to just live a life that is approaching its full potential. Corey has that innate sense to be able to identify the special needs and to holistically meet those needs. Again, we want to emphasize his book, Karate Wise, that is available through Barnes & Noble and Amazon. We hope that you will consider getting a copy of that book and learning some of the techniques that he has to help people overcome special needs. We also hope that this podcast series, Overcomers Overcoming, will warrant a 5-star rating and that you'll want to subscribe to this series. One of the attributes that is very common throughout this entire series is relationships. When we are able to develop a relationship with others, that is a very genuine, effective relationship, one in which people know without having to continuously state the words, I care. That's when people know that you genuinely want to reach out to them with a genuine friendship and relationship. We want to introduce to you the digital course that Marty and I have put together on relationships, and it is a study of human behavior, personalities, and it's a very useful way to identify and adapt to different people. As we are able to adapt to different people's needs, we are able to more effectively reach out to others and help them over any of life obstacles, any challenges that they may feel that they're just lesser able to overcome on their own. Together, we can accomplish much. And we hope that you will want to join us in the relationship series to reach out to others, not only those with special needs, but everyone who has a need, and quite honestly, everyone has a need to have a genuine relationship. So thank you for joining us. We hope that you will continue with our series of Overcomers Overcoming. Subscribe to the series, and we would like to engage with you. What are some avenues of identifying people's needs, whether there are clinically determined special needs or otherwise? Let's share together. One of the greatest benefits of this podcast series is the collaboration of those engaging with each other, and we learn through our life experiences. So join with us. Contact Marty and me at 410-586-1875 or by email, ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at thecooperculture.com. We look forward to engaging with you, and we can all learn together from your insights and life experience. Great to have you with us.